On Monday's show, I had 5 takeaways after the preseason, training camp, and the Broncos getting ready for their regular season. Now that we know what the 53-man roster is, I have 5 questions about these Broncos heading into that regular season. I'll tell you what they are, and we'll answer them together. Coming up next. All right, Broncos country, let's get into it. I know it feels like it's just, hey, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. That's how I feel about the regular season still being a handful of days, handful of days away. But I got 5 questions that we need to answer now that we know what this roster is. Kinda. There'll be some movement before September 7th, but we know what it is for the most part. First and foremost, this is something I've been banging on the table. I guess this is the table. Since training camp started, basically. And really, it goes back to a problem last year with the Denver Broncos. Question number 1, it's something I've said a bunch. Can I trust Sean Payton to actually run the football? Right now, the answer is no, I can't. He didn't do it a year ago. I know he didn't have the running back room. I have the stat in my back pocket all the time. In Sean Payton's 15 years with the Saints, 7 times he had a top 7 rushing offense. Now he had different players there that he certainly trusted. Maybe RJ and JK can do that. But right now, that's my biggest question about the offense is, will Sean actually commit to running the football? I don't know. I can't just blindly say yes because I haven't seen him do it with the Denver Broncos. Sure, he did it in New Orleans. I don't give a you-know-what about New Orleans. I care about the Broncos, and I want RJ and JK to be used with a heavy dose to make Bo's life easier. I'm just not sure that's actually going to happen. He said it last year he was going to do it. He said it all this year that he's going to do it. Saying and doing are completely different things. So that's the biggest. And again, I'll continue to bang that table for that question. My second question, it actually lines up with this running game. And it's Ben Powers. Ben Powers, your left guard over there. I just don't know how much this dude's got left in the tank. And you'd actually think, well, I'm going to go inside football for a second and nerd out a little bit. But you think with that zone scheme and the way they're going to change running the football or attempt to change running the football, you'd think Ben Powers would be licking his dang chops for this situation. He came from Baltimore where they did something very, very similar. And they're doing it with multiple running backs and, of course, Lamar Jackson. You need that big fellow to swing and lead somebody into that second level as a blocker for a running back. I've just watched Ben Powers lose mobility, lose strength over the last couple of years. He's just getting knocked down a peg or two, and that's a big-time problem. Big-time problem because they need him, and a secondary big-time problem is he's not going anywhere for a couple of years. If you go to SpotTrack, what the heck do you call it, .com, you can see his contract where the dead money, they don't get a break on that for a couple of seasons with Ben Powers. So I'm afraid that if Ben Powers is the weakest link on the offensive line, we can't talk about them being the best in the NFL, which they have been in that conversation the last couple of years. If Ben Powers is serviceable, they're going to be right back there in that conversation of the best offensive line in the entire NFL. All right, there's 2. Question number 3. Will Denver's defense at least get to 50 sacks? 63 sacks a year ago when they led the NFL in sacks and they set a franchise record. No other Bronco team had more sacks than the 2024 version at 63. They're not going to get to 63. I mean, it was nuts with what Benito did, with what Zach Allen was able to do. Jonathan Cooper was a double-digit sack getter. You had Dondre Tillman. You had Jonah Ellis both getting 5 with very, very limited reps. I really doubt they get to 63 because I think they're going to have to find more time for Tillman, more time for Jonah Ellis. What does that mean for Jonathan Cooper, Nick Benito, guys like that? I mentioned Zach Allen as an interior defensive lining having north of 5 sacks. That's not common. And can they do that again? They're certainly capable of it, but will they be able to get there? I'm not quite sure. But 45 to 50 sacks, you know what that puts you in the NFL? It puts you top 3. And with what Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, Brandon Jones, the guys on the back end of this defense that I really, really trust, I feel like they're good enough that you don't have to lead the league in sacks. Like I said, you get to top 3, top 5, let's call it 45 to 50 sacks. With what's on the back end in the secondary, the defense will be just fine. Staying on the defensive side, I was talking to my guy Cecil Lammy about this one. And again, you can tell me in the comment section, because I'm not sure how you felt about last year's run defense specifically. when I was getting ready for the podcast and the radio show, I was like, oh, I want to talk about the Broncos' run defense. And in my head, I'm like, oh, they weren't that good. I remember all these big plays. And, of course, we remember the Indy game, Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball. But before that, he was gashing those chumps. A couple of other games where they're just giving up big run plays. But when I went to look at the actual number, it's 96.4 yards per game. You average 96 yards per game. You're just a little north of 1,600 yards given up on the season. That's not great, but it's certainly not terrible by any means. So maybe to me, it's not that 96.4 number. If they stay under 100 yards, I feel like you're doing pretty solid as a run defense. Maybe this time around, it's less of those big plays. I believe the NFL calls a big run. Is it 12 or 14 yards? I can't remember the exact number. Something around there. That's a big run. You gain 12 or 14 or more yards, qualified as a big run in the NFL. That's I think, where they need to stop that. And you know what will help that? The second level. Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton. You lost the tackling machine that was Alex Singleton a year ago. Justin Strnad was fine. He wasn't great. He wasn't awful. He was just fine. But you get both of those dudes back. They both talked about it. In fact, I got to talk to Alex Singleton about it a couple months ago at this point, about instincts and kind of pre-snap intuition, if you will, between him and Dre Greenlaw. I have a lot of confidence that those big gash runs, there'll be plenty of times where the running back from the opponent gets past the first level. Now I trust a bunch more in Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw to make that stop. And it's not last year, a PJ Locke coming down, a Brandon Jones coming down. Heck, you're having to ask a guy like Riley Moss and Pat Surtain on the outside to make some of those tackles. Trust much more in the inside linebacker group to be tacklers at the second level. So I feel actually pretty good about where they are stopping the run. Now, with that said, my fifth and final question, it fits right into this conversation we're saying about stopping the run. I just told you how much trust I have with Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton. You know what I don't trust? The guys behind them. And that's because as I look at the Broncos, it's, ESPN's mock depth chart. They haven't given us their full one yet. But as I look at their inside linebacker spots, there's Alex Singleton and his great hair. There's Dre Greenlaw. And then there's Justin Strnad. They don't even have a backup at the right inside linebacker position, because they kept Karani Reed. Actually, a big shout out to Karani Reed. Now the Denver Broncos have had 22 out of 23 seasons an undrafted rookie make the roster. That's Karani Reed this year. So kudos to that dude. You have Drew Sanders, who we know he's going to miss at least 4 weeks of the regular season being on IR. I am very, very nervous about depth at the inside linebacker position. Now, let's just say, worst case scenario, you lose one or both of those dudes. Then you have to trust in Justin Strnad and Karani Reed and maybe some waiver wire pickup that they're going to add throughout this week. We get right back to where we were a year ago, where the first level gets beat, the second level can't be trusted, and then you're depending on a cornerback or a safety to stop a running back. And by the way, you're 8 yards away, 9-10 yards away from the line of scrimmage. So that question, those are my two biggest. They're my front and back, the beginning and the anchor, if you will. Can I trust Sean Payton to commit to running the football? The answer right now is no. If your answer is yes, convince me why. Because I think you're crazy if the answer is yes. And then depth at the inside linebacker position. Maybe by week's end, I feel way better because they found somebody on the waiver wire. But right now, if something terrible happens to the inside linebacker group, this team's in some trouble stopping the run. All right, I mentioned it. Comment, like, subscribe, everything you got going on. I really would like to know what some of your major questions are, or if you have answers to my major questions. Do that in the comment section. I'll circle back and try to respond and reply with you. While you're here, like what we're doing, check out all the other shows. We've basically got you covered all day long throughout the week right here on our YouTube channel. This has been Dover on Denver, and now I'm done.